Honda shares surge as merger talks with Nissan ignite hopes of creating the world's third largest automaker. Russian consumers face soaring prices as sanctions bite and military spending reshapes the economy. And we explore how scammers are stealing billions and targeting your holiday cheer. Hello, I'm Taiba Aydin with the latest business and finance news here on TRT World. Shares of Japanese automaker Honda are on track for their best day in 16 years after it announced a buyback of up to $7 billion of its shares on Monday amid merger talks with Nissan. The car makers announced they had begun official negotiations to merge, which could make them the world's third largest car maker by sales, with a combined value of $54 billion. Honda shares were up as much as 15.5% and would clock their best day since October 2008. If gains hold. Meanwhile, Nissan shares fell more than 1%. A holding company will be established as the parent organisation for both Honda and Nissan and will be listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. For more on this, let's speak with Russ Mould in London. He's Director of Investment at AJ Bell. Thanks for being with us, Russ. Now, as much as Honda shares have surged, we're seeing the opposite for Nissan. Why is that?
Yeah, that's been the case since the deal was first announced over a week ago. So perhaps analysts and investors are thinking that Nissan may end up doing more of the heavy lifting when it comes to cost cutting. But also we do have the technical situation that you just mentioned. Honda is buying back shares, whereas Nissan, well, there may be a possibility now that its former French partner, or its current French partner, Renault, may look to unload its 35% stake and sell those shares, potentially putting some pressure on the share price.
Right, and this is expected to be to become the world's third largest automaker. How would this merger help reshape the Japanese auto industry in the face of rising challenges from Chinese EVs?
Yeah, I'm sure that's what they're hoping. I mean, they've got Chinese competition, they've got a slow global car market, they've got the threat of American tariffs to deal with, so that creating the third world's biggest car company from the 8th and 9th would provide benefits of scale. I'm sure they're looking to pool their resources to improve their work in electric vehicles, in batteries and software, and also there will be some scope for cost cutting as there is a lot of production overlap, particularly in America and Japan. What
about Nissan's other partner, Mitsubishi? What role would they have in this deal?
I mean, Nissan owns a near 1/4 stake in Mitsubishi, and Mitsubishi has said today that it is going to investigate joining the merger and it will make a decision in January. I guess the difficulty here is merging two companies can be difficult, and you do have very different cultures at Nissan and at Honda. So adding a third company to that mix may make the deal harder to do, even if you can see how it might work on paper. And we have seen car companies merge in the past, Daimler, Chrysler, and Fiat and Peugeot and Chrysler to create Stellantis. And they really haven't necessarily delivered. Daimler Chrysler was a failure, and Stellantis hasn't really delivered on the benefits it was hoping to bring. So these things are not easy to make them. It's not easy to make these things work. And what impact would this have on its strategic partner, Renault? Yeah, I mean, that's a partnership that hasn't really delivered what either company was hoping. They seem to have been drifting apart over the past year, and there are suggestions that, again, they may now look to unwind that partnership as the Japanese companies come together.
All right, Russ Mould, we will have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us.
Keep well, thank you.
Now, with more sanctions imposed on Russia and the economy transforming to meet increased military spending, Russian consumers are seeing price hikes for almost all categories of goods. Last week, President Vladimir Putin said inflation was a worrying signal, while the central bank kept interest rates at historic highs of 21%. Dasha Chernyshova reports from Moscow.
The same value as gold. That's how many Russians now describe butter, which saw an almost 30% price hike over a year. Industry insiders say it's a result of higher production costs, plus an increase in prices for imported raw materials, packaging and logistics. But the vast majority of consumers look at food prices as an indicator of overall economic health. And although the official inflation stands at around 9%, already twice the central bank's target, Shoppers note a more significant growth in the price of basic staples.
Some 5-6 years ago, I could buy a lot of food like butter, dairy products for $10. Today, there is not much you can buy. And we get $300 of fashion with all the bonuses and indexation, and even bread and grains have grown in price.
I have noticed a significant price hike. I could buy a lot for $10. Today, I spent $20 for almost the same good.
Everything has grown in price, butter, even bread. But people still buy it. They have no other choice.
Analysts, however, warn against using food prices to judge about the overall state of the economy, as they are subject to seasonal and currency volatility.
I wouldn't say that food inflation is an indicator of how things are going in our state. We are now approaching the new year. And if against this background there are problems with supplies, with settlements, like recently we had other sanctions on the part of banks, Gazprom Bank was even under sanctions. It is clear that this leads to supply failures, which can also provoke growth in individual segments.
A recent study found that today an average Russian family is spending double the amount on basic staples compared to 2020. To stabilize food prices, Russian regional authorities have been allowed to enter into price stabilization agreements with producers and retail chains for any good, not just socially significant food products. Household prices are up too. So are the services, rent, and pretty much everything. And further growth is expected in 2025. That is not always true about salaries or pensions.
With inflation in Russia on the rise, the central bank continues to increase the key interest rate. But that also pressures businesses and damages the cash savings of ordinary people. So after years of showing resilience in a period of serious instability, many wonder how long they will have to continue to adapt to the ever-changing environment and whether tomorrow they will be able to afford the same goods. Dasha Chernysova, TRT World, Moscow.
Let's cross now to Moscow and speak with Olga Kresnak. She's an associate professor at the Higher School of Economics. Good to have you with us, Olga. Now, as we just heard, food prices have doubled since 2020. How does this reflect the overall health of the Russian economy?
Well, indeed, the inflation is kind of high, but we cannot look at the inflation as a single element, detaching it from the economy, from the Russian economy. And if we look on a more broader scale, so Russian economy in a good shape, and we see on the industrial scale, heavy military production, including heavy industry, so everything works very well. And Russia's GDP is about 5%, which is much higher than some European countries. And in this case, we have very low unemployment, and it also means that people have a good salary. And this salary is the increase of the salary almost the same as the inflation rate. So in this case, we see kind of like a parity. The problem is maybe with the supplies, goods and services, which is somehow negatively affected by Western sanctions. But Russia's way and Russia's strategic plans for achieving its economic and technological sovereignty, it's about to provide necessary goods and services as it used to be. So, and it's something what is Russian doing, and it's something what Vladimir Putin has mentioned just recently.
Right, and you mentioned Western sanctions there. They've been a key factor of prices rising since the war in Ukraine. How is Russia mitigating those effects?
Well, I would not say the sanctions is the only reason of the inflation. Russia still is a part of global economy, and we see the inflation rate maybe a bit slower, but still it is happening in advanced countries, technologically and economically advanced countries. So basically, it's a part of global problem. But of course, sanctions, Western sanctions, they affect Russian economy. But I would notice this, underline this. So it's about goods and services. And also some logistics and some transnational transfers in the financial sectors. So just making these operations, it would be like more expensive now than before. But Russia is doing something to somehow to overcome these expenses. But anyway, so we are on the way to achieving our economic sovereignty. It is something what we need to consider.
Right, and Russia has historically been dependent on energy exports. How have those revenues been impacted?
Well, now it's not the relevant issue because, of course, Russia still is selling gas and oil, but it's not the main part of Russian budget. So Russia actually it's an agricultural country, so the production of agriculture it's very high, and actually it extends selling gas and oil. So, and in this case, so Russia in a good shape. So we need to look at this bigger perspective. And I would not say Russia is totally dependent on gas and oil production and selling. So it's something different. The most important part, Russia is independent in case of energy sector, and it is the most important things for economy. And Russia is doing very well, I believe.
Okay, Olga Kresnak, Associate Professor at the Higher School of Economics. Thank you very much for your analysis. Now, a quick look at some of the other top business stories from around the world. US consumer confidence, which rose shortly after the election, has turned out to be short-lived. The consumer confidence index unexpectedly fell 8.1 points to 104.7, reflecting concerns about the economy's future growth. Americans worry that tariffs under the Trump administration will increase prices, which is one of the main reasons for the decline. A North Korean hacking group has stolen over $300 million in cryptocurrency from Japan-based exchange DMM Bitcoin. The traitor group, believed to be part of the Lazarus Group linked to North Korea, carried out the heist. The attack involved social engineering, where a hacker posed as a recruiter on LinkedIn to contact an employee of another crypto wallet company. El Salvador's Congress has overturned a 7-year-old ban on metals mining, defying environmental and religious groups. The legislation, backed by President Nayib Bukele, will allow mining everywhere except nature reserves and sensitive watershed. In 2017, El Salvador became the first country in the world to ban all forms of metals mining in a bid to protect water resources. And Telegram CEO Pavel Durov has announced that the messaging platform is now profitable, about 11 years after it was founded. Revenues exceeded $1 billion in 2024, fueled by a surge in premium subscribers. Initially operating without fees, the Russian messaging app began offering paid subscriptions and advertisements in 2021. An international cyber scam conned victims in India to the tune of $14 million in the first 4 months of this year. The money was taken through online transfers, with cyber criminals impersonating law enforcement officials or government agencies. Smita Sharma has the details.
Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay is a senior journalist and author based in Delhi. On 12th July this year, he called back a number after receiving a recorded message warning that his mobile would be disconnected. He walked right into a cyber trap called a digital arrest, a troubling scam where fraudsters put victims under an illegal digital custody, citing false accusations and extort money. Mukhopadhyay was kept under an illegal digital custody for 28 hours.
In the night also, I was told to sleep in the study where my computer was there. And I had to sleep in the gaze of the camera by turning the camera on the couch where I was sleeping. So it was a very traumatic experience.
Multiple con actors told Mukhopadhyay first over an audio call and then Skype video call that a SIM under his name was used to send pornographic messages. He was also accused of having a bank account in his name used for money laundering. The scammers posed as law agency officials, adding credibility to their allegations.
They said that these are very grave charges. That is how the whole thing started. A voice which said the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. The second female voice, Crime Branch Office of the Mumbai Police. And third was an officer of the Central Bureau of Investigations.
The fraudsters made him liquidate his long-term investments as payout for the acquisitions. But luckily he realized the scam and escaped without paying any money to them. There are investigations into dozens of such cases which have affected more than 92,000 Indians this year alone, an issue flagged by Prime Minister Modi recently.
Digital arrest.
Officials say the criminals are an organized network operating from several Southeast Asian countries. Their units in India acquire mule SIM cards and open mule bank accounts under the name of individuals without their knowledge. The operations are spread across multiple countries, making it harder to crack down on the culprits. People have been duped out of their life savings.
Once the money is cheated from a victim, it is being put in those mule accounts, and after layering at multiple levels, it is being routed out through that Dubai. So there are multiple countries involved. There are multiple layer of wings, we can say, in their scam company. Like one is where the call is originating, other one related to SIMs, and the third one related to money laundering.
India takes pride in its digital public infrastructure, but digital payments are turning into double-edged swords. All kinds of people, including highly educated professionals, have become victims of scamsters driven by fear, guilt, or simply duped. Official agencies are struggling to curb the menace, especially as many fraudsters operate from overseas in countries like Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar. Smita Sharma, TRT World, New Delhi.
Now, the festive season should be a time of joy and togetherness, but it also serves as a lucrative period for cyber criminals. With advanced tech strategies and emotional ploys, scammers continually adapt to outsmart unsuspecting victims. By recognizing their tactics and adopting simple preventative measures, you can safeguard your holiday celebrations from fraud. Global holiday scams resulted in more than $3.8 billion in losses last year, showing the massive scale of the problem. With 68 billion scam robocalls placed in a single year, the festive season becomes a prime time for fraud. Fraud rates also spiked by 20% during this period as scammers exploit consumer trust and holiday cheer. Bogus coupon links account for 40% of online holiday fraud attempts, making them a favorite tactic for scammers. A single click on these fake links can give criminals access to your shopping accounts. In fact, 25% of victims report financial losses due to fraudulent coupon emails. Bogus coupon links account for 40% of online holiday fraud attempts. One click can give scammers access to your online shopping accounts. 25% of victims report losing money from fake coupon emails. Call tracking technologies have helped reduce spam calls by 39 billion annually, offering hope against scammers. Legal crackdowns are also strengthening consumer protections by limiting the harvesting and misuse of personal data. With privacy laws in place, the opportunities for personalized scams are shrinking, making it harder for criminals to succeed. Joining us live from Frankfurt is Dennis Kenji Kipka, Research Director at the Cyber Intelligence Institute. Good to have you with us, Dennis. Now, what is the scale of cyber scams at the moment, and how can we as consumers protect ourselves?
So the scam level is quite high, and the threat landscape, for example, surrounding online payment methods has evolved significantly over the years, becoming increasingly sophisticated. So cyber criminals employ a wide range of tactics, including advanced phishing attacks, malware, and social engineering to target users. And as e-commerce continues to grow, so too does the attractiveness of online payment systems as targets for malicious actors, and data breaches, identity theft, and financial losses have become more prevalent, making robust security measures essential. And while many online payment platforms have implemented enhanced security protocols, the constant evolution of cyber threats necessitates ongoing vigilance from both users and providers.
Right, and how are technological advancements helping further protect consumers from scam calls?
Yes, so for example, there's a protocol called STIR/SHAKEN, and this technology advances significantly the consumer protection against scam calls by implementing so-called robust caller ID authentication. So this framework utilizes cryptographic certificates to verify the authenticity of calls at both the originating and terminating points of the network, And by ensuring that the displayed caller ID accurately really reflects the true source of the call, this protocol empowers consumers to make informed decisions about which calls to answer and effectively reducing the prevalence and impact of fraudulent calls such as robocalls and spoofing attempts.
And how effective are legal crackdowns in deterring large-scale fraud operations?
Yeah, so frankly speaking, legal crackdowns can be a powerful tool in deterring large-scale fraud operations, but their effectiveness is multifaceted and depends on various factors. So while they can disrupt ongoing schemes, dismantle criminal networks, and recover stolen funds, the impact of legal crackdowns can be limited by the complex nature of the fraud, the challenges of cross-border enforcement, and the rapid evolution of fraud techniques. And additionally, the deterrent effect of legal crackdowns can be influenced by the severity of penalties, the likelihood of prosecution, and also the perceived risk of getting caught.
And what immediate steps can consumers take to safeguard their personal information during this season?
Yeah, during the festive season, consumers can safeguard their personal information by exercising heightened vigilance and when shopping, for example, online or responding to any kind of messages. And this includes verifying the authenticity of websites and emails, being wary of unsolicited offers or requests for personal information, and utilizing strong, unique passwords for all of their online accounts, and additionally enabling two-factor authentication wherever possible, and regularly monitoring bank and credit card statements for any suspicious activity can definitely significantly reduce the risk of falling victim to holiday scams.
Okay, Dennis Kenji Kipka, thank you very much for joining us and for those tips to help protect ourselves from cyber scams.
You're welcome.
Now, across Africa, the rising cost of living is pushing up the price of all essentials, and daily life for many has become a battle for survival. There have been protests across the continent calling for urgent government action to address the problem. Anne Macharia reports.
In 2024, Africa's cost of living crisis beat head, with inflation soaring in countries like Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya. And Peter Akudo, who has run his tailoring business in Nairobi for over 10 years, is feeling the brunt of it. Rising costs are threatening not just his livelihood, but also his family's future.
The year has been tough, especially on the business side of it, because now people will choose to, instead of making clothes, they choose to buy food, or rather cater for their basic needs first.
In June, proposals by the government to raise taxes sparked deadly youth-led protests nationwide. They grew from online condemnations and into mass rallies demanding a political overhaul, barely 2 years into President William Ruto's presidency. Nigerians took to the streets across the country after the government removed fuel subsidies as part of economic reforms, causing prices to triple. The devaluation of the local currency, the naira, also spiked the cost of food and electricity tariffs, leaving about 87 million people struggling to survive on about $2 a day, according to World Bank estimates. Amnesty International says 24 protesters were killed and over 1,000 were detained by security forces. In Ghana's capital, Accra, a court banned planned protests against the rising cost of living as the price of staples like eggs, tomatoes and yams surged past 50% from last year. Economists like James Shikwati link the crisis to global factors such as the Ukraine conflict, supply chain disruptions, and local challenges like debt burdens and currency devaluation.
We are oriented towards copy-pasting from other economies. You want to say, okay, the US did this, let's try it here. Or the British did this, or the Chinese. So I think first we have to stop that mentality of copy-paste and look for a possibility to domesticate.
This includes investing in local manufacturing to reduce dependency on import, renegotiating public debt to free up resources for public services, and adopting policies to stabilize currencies. For individuals like Peter, resilience is key. But for government, bold action is now non-negotiable.
The cost of living crisis is reshaping lives across Africa, driving people to the streets and stretching families to their limits. The pressure is also mounting on leaders to deliver solutions, not just promises. Anne Masharia, TRT World, Nairobi.
Well, that's all your business news for now. Thanks for watching.